Welcome to the Pink Pineapple Podcast, where we peel back FemTech and take a bite out of more than just the juicy bits.
I'm Claudia, and I'm Emma's partner in Pineapple for this adventure.
And I'm Emma. Together, we're exploring women's health across the full timeline, from first periods to menopause and everything in between.
Each week, we'll dive into the stories, science, and software shaping the future of women's health. From hormones to hardware, fertility to FemTech founders.
Think of us as your slightly nosy best friends who just happen to be doctors with a healthy curiosity for innovation.
We'll be chatting to clinicians, creators, and change makers. And yes, asking the questions you actually want answered.
So whether you're out for a walk, cooking dinner, or hiding from your to-do list, join us as we get curious, clinical, and occasionally controversial.
This is the Pink Pineapple Podcast,
where women's health meets what's next. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pink Pineapple Podcast. And this week, we are focusing on male allyship within health tech. And we have the one and only LinkedIn's finest, Derrick Khor, who is NHS cancer doctor by background and co-founder of Medical Consulting Group. Hello, Derrick. We are very excited to have you here.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me on.
So, Claudia, you have got another guest, as usual.
I do.
I think
I'm
we're
super
both intrigued
excited.
as to who it is.
I'm super excited, Derrick,
Yeah?
because what does this mean to you?
Right. Well done. Well done. Well done. Absolutely well done.
So
You remember-
for anybody not watching, I've got a butternut squash and I've drawn a pair of butt cheeks on my butternut squash because it's a butternut squash. Now, Emma, we
Butternut
need to explain. We need to explain to you the context
What's
of
going on?
To be honest, I think we need to explain to everyone the context.
That is such deep LinkedIn lore, man. I think that's like been a year ago. That was a year ago. My wife found a butternut squash that actually had two little butts in it. It's the cutest. It was so funny because it actually had a proper butt on that butternut squash, and I just took a picture and put it on LinkedIn, and everybody laughed at it. I'll need to find a photo for you guys.
Yeah,
It's
we'll have
really-
to see it.
And that, Emma, is how I started to follow Derrick. That is the
That's
story. That is the story. That is what clinched the deal for me. And I followed Derrick. And the rest is history.
It's history. Well
Of
done,
interest.
Claudia.
Of interest, Derrick, how many impressions did that post get?
I don't know. I can probably scroll right through to find it. But I don't think it was like massively viral or anything. It was just like everybody just like, just like
Yeah,
one of those
it worked
silly
for
things.
me.
Yeah, one of those silly things. Because, LinkedIn is sometimes it takes itself too seriously. And sometimes you just need something silly and to just break the hype a little bit. But yeah. Well done, Claudia. I've totally forgot about it. But amazing find.
A little bit of nostalgia just to kick us off.
Yeah.
But onto business, because we are
Business.
super happy to have you on. And we would love to find out more about you and about Medical Consulting Group. So could you give us a sense of what it is that you do?
So yes, well, as you guys know, my name is Derrick. I am a cancer doctor. I work up in the Beatson Cancer Center in Glasgow. But we also run this organization, this company called the Medical Consulting Group. And what we really do is we help lots of health and biotech companies engage clinical professionals. So key opinion leaders, senior clinicians, people who really understand the pathway and the settings in which they are innovating in. So, we've been working with 50 to 70 different clients over the years, and, we've connected about, we just did a year-end audit with Thomas, and we had connected about 300 clinicians so far. So it's an ever-expanding thing, and our clinical network has been expanding quite organically and now covers around 1,500, 1,600 senior clinicians throughout the UK, doing parts in EU and Australia as well. So really what we do is just to help these early stage companies get the best, robust clinical expertise so that they end up building things that people actually need and want. It's really quite a great journey so far because we've worked with some really good companies, and it's great to see products coming to life, So it's a very rewarding journey.
And have you seen, kind of as we're going into 2026, Derrick, have you seen that landscape, that consulting landscape evolve or change over the last year or so?
I would say yes, but not in a very big and dynamic change kind of way. On one hand, we have a lot more clinicians, doctors that are very interested in this space. So you see a lot more people popping up, a lot more interested folks. But on the other hand, the companies that are looking for the profiles are often looking for a very specific and niche profile. So, we've done a big job with a big marketing firm in the United States. They were looking for like very specific clinicians with very specific training in this one specific condition. And often those are hard to find. So that's not really changed. For the past 3 years that we've operated the MCG, our clients have always looked for very senior clinicians that has a very niche knowledge. And often these people are not on LinkedIn. You actually have to go hunting for them. And we are very lucky to have a very big network, so we can easily find these people very quickly, even with very tight time frame. So yes, there's more supply, but is it the right supply for the demand? It's not quite there yet, is my feeling.
And I know, Derek, that you've been a lot more vocal on social media recently about the inequalities in women's health
Yes.
and in FemTech.
Yes.
When did you realize that, or when did you see that is quite a big issue in the space?
So I've always noticed that ever since I've been on LinkedIn, been more social media friendly. I mean, prior to this, I wasn't doing any social media at all. I was just I was working during the COVID pandemic, so there's really no time for social media and all. But really, I started noticing a lot more conversations and topics about women's health and about inequalities, and also not just in women's health, but also the inequality in female founders and female entrepreneurs. But really, it was in Health Europe, where I was invited by a very incredible team of women from Netherlands, and they invited me to come and speak on a panel with some amazing founders and some amazing policymakers. And I was again the only guy on the stage, and also probably less than 10% of the room was men. And we were up on the stage, we were just talking about this, and it was a very inspiring. It was a very inspiring event because I felt for the first time that I was allowed to be a part of this, and I think it's a big topic of conversation that we can have, because very much so, we want to be respectful as men, and we see that women are very passionate about this space, and rightfully so, given their experiences. But also sometimes we feel like, oh, I don't feel like I should say anything. I don't feel like it's my role to say anything, and I want to be respectful. And I certainly don't want to be mansplaining something to a group of very bright and very, very experienced women. So it was because I was invited to that event that I felt, oh, actually, the women are incredibly welcoming. They are incredibly understanding. It felt like I was invited into the room to actually start talking about it. And from that event, I felt more. I committed my time to say I'm going to use my platform to start talking about the gender health inequalities and to help, at least shed some light, from my point of view, And that was shortly after that I spoke to Claudia and said, hey, Claudia, I'm really interested in this, but I want to do this properly. Would you be my mentor in this? And Claudia gratefully say yes. And, here we are.
And I think I've learnt more from Derek than he has from me, which is
We met
often
initially, yeah.
the way mentorship works. I would say I've learnt.
Yeah. It's been an interesting journey so far, I would say, because it opened up an entire whole new conversation and whole new perspectives. I put up quite a lot of women's health posts, and I often find it's the comments that really opens your eyes. You listen to what's actually happening, what are people really experiencing, and you really say, okay, it's not just a problem that you see on a big McKinsey white paper. It's a real problem that people are experiencing on the ground. And I often feel very moved or touched whenever I share a post and then someone shares their own personal health struggles with it. I talked about one about how women are more likely to not get analgesia. Are much more unlikely to get treated seriously by a healthcare professional. And you hear the stories about the women just iterating very graphically, like I went to the A&E, no one gave me painkillers, I was just suffering in pain, etc., etc., etc. And you really like, okay, yes, there's a real problem that needs proper addressing.
Yeah, I agree. And what would you say is male allyship, Derek? Like if you were to define, what does it mean to be a male ally in your eyes?
I think for me, there's a huge definition for here. I think in my opinion, I think male allyship for me looks a lot more like a supportive role. Mainly because, and I know this is not quite exactly right, because there are plenty of incredible male founders who are innovating in this space as well. But for me, I think male allyship is a lot more supportive, where because there are already so many great female founders, women who are building and championing in this space, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And often it's just us supporting, and support can come in very different shapes and form. It could be a comment in a post, it could be a like, it could be a share, it could be, just introducing the right folks to the right people, or highlighting the right resources to the right people, or even investing into the right companies. It's a quiet support. It could be more vocal, but it's more an acknowledgement of the hard work that a lot of these incredible women are doing, and to just keep supporting them, and to be part of that ecosystem. It's presence. It's actually presence. You can't say you're supporting someone if you're not visible. Support has to be visible. It's not performative, but you have to show that you are there, or else how would they know you're an ally?
Yeah, I agree. And you said something really interesting. You said about feeling allowed to be in this space, or almost having permission to be in the
Mm.
women's. Could you expand on that a little bit more, what you mean by that?
And I think that's a very good point. I had this exact conversation with someone you guys might know as well, Leo Tyson, who was the founder of Nexus
Hmm.
Connected. He's doing some very good works here, and literally the best women's health event organizer of 2025. I
Oh,
think
yeah, hands down.
Yeah,
nobody
definitely.
is going to argue against that. But we both were having this conversation, and we both had quite a similar experience as well. Sometimes it's sometimes you feel that it is not your space to be in this place. And the truth, and I'll be very candid and very honest here, I've written a few posts on women's health. And to be fair, I personally have never gotten like the "who are you? Why are you talking about this? You're not welcome here" kind of feeling. But I have had some men who privately WhatsApp me and say, I was trying to do this, and then I got shot down very much by someone in your comments. And it was so a lot of men, myself included, were quite wary about going to this space because, first of all, they don't want to put their foot in their mouth. They don't want to offend anyone. They understand that this can be a very emotive subject. Given things that we're discussing here, endometriosis, delays of being diagnosed, misdiagnosis, suffering from an illness for a long period of time with no solutions. These are very, very emotive subjects. And when someone who really did not understand this try to butt in or stick in, they often can make a mistake. And that can often lead to a very negative response. So I would say a lot of men probably do feel like, oh, I want to help, but I don't know enough about this situation, and I'm more worried that I might offend people and do more harm than good. So it is from that point of view that it becomes a bit trickier. Now, I am more privileged in a sense because I'm a doctor and I have the proper medical training. All of us here are doctors. We have proper medical school training, a decade of clinical experience. So we do know what we are talking about. So I can approach this topic with more credibility and more understanding and knowledge because I understand the medical subjects, and I do treat women with cancer as well. So that makes it a bit easier for me to come. But I do feel that sometimes men sometimes almost have to be invited in or feel like they are allowed in because they really don't want to get chewed out.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, isn't it, Derek? I think these conversations are critical for various reasons. So, like you say, if someone puts a post on and there is a lot of activity in the comments, I think it's a really good kind of a learning opportunity for people. So if people maybe don't know about something and they comment, I think a good stance to have is, well, let me tell you about it. Let me kind of educate you on that and help you understand. And I think that's probably a good way to go so that there is that allyship there. I think, like you say, I think it's a shame if we are perpetuating a culture where men feel that they're getting shot down if they're trying to be supportive. So I think that there's a bit of a cultural shift that maybe has to happen there. And I think we have to normalize these conversations and not make it feel like men have to seek permission to have those kind of
Yeah.
those discussions. Do you think there's any way we can do that in 2026? Is there any kind of actionable steps that we can take to try and normalize normalize these conversations? And I don't just mean on social media, which I know is quite relevant to the discussion that we've had, but I mean kind of more like just in general in the workplace, for example. Is there any kind of steps you think that could be taken there?
I think definitely there will be steps, and I think I'm just very conscious that often you showing is a lot better than telling is a key thing. And that was one of the reasons why I was so keen on actually writing on LinkedIn or on social media. Not because I think I'm anyone important or anyone useful, but because simply it's a lot easier for a man to come into this space if they see some other men doing it. Even better if a man and a woman both collaborate together to work on this in a more equitable way. You know, showing is a lot better than telling. It'll be quite strange if someone randomly just comes up and say, who has no previous experience in women's health, who has no idea what they're talking about, suddenly just come out and say, I want to talk about women's health. And here I am preaching to you about menopause in workplace when I have no experience in menopause, no training in menopause. Or, I just probably read an article online about menopause. That probably is a bit insincere and probably does raise a few alarm bells. But let's say an approach where, you work with, say, a women menopause health expert. There are many menopause workplace experts out there who collaborate together, let's say, with an executive, come together and have this conversation, like a panel, a one-to-one conversation in front of the workplace and talk about this. I think that comes off a lot more organically, and it's more working in tandem with another person who really knows what they're talking about. Not just any woman, but someone who generally has the right knowledge and the right space to talk about this, especially in the workplace. I think that way it will help open a lot more conversations and a bit more understanding. And I think sometimes you almost have to curate events specifically for men as well, and to really have a bit of a think of a strategy of how you want to bring in men to the conversations, because we know that lots of women's health conferences, it's almost 100% women attendance. And one of my good friends, who's a man who went for a women's health conference, paid for the ticket and everything, went to the front door, and someone actually asked, "Who are you? Why are you here?" And that was the first thing they said to him, and he felt so sheepish, and he almost, I'm not sure if he actually went for the event, and it's a very well-known event that all of you would know as well. So we were, it gets a bit more trickier that way. But I also understand the context in which this happens. Let's not pretend that this comes out of nowhere. I've heard of situations where some people actually go to these events looking to pick up a date. It has happened. It has happened. People went to a women's health thing pretending to be an ally and actually want to pick people up for it. Asking for people out for dates is completely unreasonable and completely inappropriate. And there are experiences that makes women put their guards up, and we have to acknowledge that. So I think it's a very important balance of who do you really want to attract. And a very good question has came up. I think, was it Ida Tin that actually that put up this question in LinkedIn probably 6 months or 7 months ago, that actually asked the question, what can you do to write in a way that would engage more men? How would you organize an event to invite more men to your conference? Do they need to bring Ferraris and put sports cars in their events to get more men to come? I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't think that's a good idea, actually. I don't think you need to specifically pander to men using a very male focus area, because you will end up attracting the wrong kind of people. And I was thinking myself, like, how would you get more men interested in a certain women's health post? I think if you want to attract some genuine allies who have the right mindset and who are really here to support, you probably don't need to do that much different, because the passion that comes across is very real and very raw. You don't need to change the passion. You don't need to change the topic necessarily too much, but rather maybe take a more collaborative, more considerate approach, when writing. Not change too much of what you're already doing, because you want to attract, if it's just like I'm attracted to this, you will naturally attract the right allies with your passion and with your journey. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
And there's something to be said. A lot of people talk about there being male privilege. And I don't know if you've heard it. I'm sure we've spoken about it actually ourselves. So I know you have. On LinkedIn, a lot of people are saying that female posts, so women's posts, are being suppressed or are not being seen, are not being dispersed as widely, are not as visible. And there's talk around people who have changed the gender of their LinkedIn profile and have seen this exponential increase in views that they hadn't seen before. So I would say there's probably something there around using your platform as a man to highlight these conditions that women experience, to create these posts, because you potentially have this platform that will reach more people than if, for example, I was to do the same post. I don't know how you've seen what's been happening recently.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this past month, I think November and December
Mm-hmm.
has been spicy. Very,
Yeah.
very spicy, Started, for the context of some of our readers, who's not lurking on LinkedIn as much as we do. I think it all started really, I'll say it really climaxed when, was it Helen O'Neill or Deirdre O'Neill put up a very big post for fertility, talking about women's health censorship. Massive impressions, got like 120,000 impressions, like almost 3,000 likes on LinkedIn. And by any metric, that is a proper viral post. And the next day, that post got taken down. It was literally censored by LinkedIn. And the post was completely tame and mild, with a graphic that's completely tame and mild. And LinkedIn censored it. And then they went up to, and then Helen put up a second post, and a video post that showed that it got removed. And then that post also got super viral. And then LinkedIn eventually put the original post back up. But if you really can't write this story, isn't it? The post about women's health censorship got censored. And and then that's really triggered this whole massive onslaught of people saying, "Yo, what's going on here?" And another quite famous LinkedIn creator, her name escapes me, but she writes a lot about mental health. She did a change in her post, where change in her gender, and when she changed her gender, she felt that, like, literally all she did was went to LinkedIn settings, personalizations, change gender to male, and she saw a huge rise in her impressions, and she wrote about it. And since then, lots of women have also went on and changed their gender to male, and they saw quite a rise in their impressions. And then LinkedIn has then issued a formal statement saying that there isn't a gender-based suppression, and there isn't a gender-based algorithmic change. So it begs the question: is LinkedIn gaslighting us? Is LinkedIn gaslighting us by saying, like, no, there's no such thing. You guys are all making it up. But I guess there is probably some truth or some unknown factors in play when hundreds of women, thousands of women are seeing this trend. If it's one or two or three, you're like, but when you start to see a significant trend, and so many people actually experience this, you probably need to start to address some questions. But I'm not sure how sustained it is. I'm not sure how sustained it is. Do they get sustained high impressions? From what I know from LinkedIn, LinkedIn isn't a tough cookie to crack no matter what you do. There's no hacks here or things that you can just switch a flip and then get lots of impressions. Ultimately, value matters. So I think that's another point to say. But I think this whole debacle has been quite a eye-opening journey to see. And we know from one of your esteemed guests, Anna O'Sullivan's censorship study, that there is definitely a social media blanket suppression of women's health topic. And there's also the CIJ, the Center of Intimacy Justice, which is essentially the US equivalent of censorship. They've done a massive study throughout all the other platforms except for LinkedIn. And they essentially find the same thing as well. Advertisers are not happy to advertise anything of women's health. And it gets into a whole conundrum, because if you can't talk about it, how are you going to address it? If you can't advertise for your innovation that's going to help for women's health, how are you going to help the women? So yeah, big problems still to be addressed.
And like you say, Derek, it's, how can you help the women, but how can you also run a successful business if you
Yeah.
can't market your product? And I think that is something that has also been coming through as well, and something that Anna, when she came on the podcast, spoke quite frankly about the financial implications as well. And I suppose leading from that, one of the things I think that female founders worry about is when they're raising funds, do male VCs, do investors get it? Are they going to invest in women's health, or are they not going to see the impact? And from your point of view, is there anything that investors need to think about kind of going into 2026 when they're approaching women's health as an opportunity?
And that's a very timely question to ask, because just yesterday, Abby Waskow, he made an incredible post, and I think probably worth linking it in the podcast as well, because Debbie Waskow set up the Invest Women Task Force. It's this year, from what I can read, to this year, 2025 is the first year of progress, and they've actually managed to earmark £635 million specifically for investing in women. And so far, they deployed £70 million already, specifically for women. And it's quite amazing, because we have a lot of people, like £365 million is for female and mixed entrepreneurs, and £207 million is for female and mixed fund managers, so for VCs, for essentially venture capital people who want to set up their own venture capital. And it's really incredible. £70 million has already been deployed, and it's the largest that we've seen in the world. Debbie, I put a comment on Debbie's post, and Debbie said that, this is likely the largest ever such initiative seen in the whole wide world. So I think this is a huge, unmistakable, unmissable signal that the UK is taking investing in women very, very seriously. But I guess, I shared this post on a WhatsApp group as well, the Nexus Connected WhatsApp group, which is a fantastic WhatsApp group. One of the comments that I mentioned, rightfully so, was that the trickle down effect is much slower than we all would think, because yes, there's this £635 million right up top, but that's not gonna trickle down very much to early stage female founders that quickly, and it's probably more earmarked for more growth stage companies and bigger funds or business loans. So I think there is a very, very good tailwind for investing in women, but I think a lot more spaces to go. And I know, GG Ventures have also raised their fund too, and they're going to complete their raise hopefully soon. And they are investing specifically in women's performance stack, longevity, exercise, sports, women's health, cancer, etc. So previously this was not available at all, and now we're seeing more and more people coming up, and hopefully with this fund of funds that's the Invest in Women Task Force has put together, hopefully we'll see more women-led VCs, because ultimately we need money, cold hard cash, not support, not likes, not applause, but cold hard cash to invest in the women's health businesses. So yeah.
The other thing is, these are good investments as well. Women typically, I'm on an accelerator at the moment, and I was told women typically exit quicker and they exit for more. That's what I was told. So women are a pretty good bet as well, apparently, for investors.
There was actually a very good study. I think was it BCG that put it up, that actually is a good white paper that actually proven that women's health business are better investments. So there is a good white paper. I will need to find it. I'll probably need to include it in the podcast as well. Essentially shows that women's health businesses are much better investment and has a very higher ROI. Yeah, I think so. So definitely, it's an objective fact. But I guess also the biggest lesson I've learned this year, and it was thanks to a friend called Charlotte Lewis from Meals and Refills, we've done a podcast with as well. We need to invest in women's health, not because it is the financially great thing to do. We need to invest in women's health because it is the right thing to do. Because if we just fixate on the numbers, we will miss the point. So what if the numbers don't point in the right direction? What if they say investing in women's health actually does not really yield any gain at all? Does it mean we should stop investing in women's health? And once upon a time, cancer was very much like that as well. Cancer was a one-way ticket to death, and it made no financial sense at all to invest in it. But people still put the moonshot for cancer and really invested significantly in it, and we saw such incredible progress in the past 50 years. So yeah, invest in women's health because it is the right thing to do.
100% agree. I'm being attacked by my dogs as you speak, which
Very
is just
very, very cute.
My wheelie chair is just being pushed like out of frame by this.
Just saw Claudia like kind of
this Dalmatian.
slide out of shot.
Healthy dog.
Yeah, but I totally agree, Derek. I think there's an ethical consideration here as well. You know, it's not just a monetary, it's not just a financial one. It's very much an ethical one. It's like 51% of the population. Like we've put women's health and wellness aside really for so long. I think really it's time that we focused a lot more on it and tried to help it catch up as much as possible. And now we've got better and better tech as well. The tech is getting better. The advances in tech are getting better. So now is a great time to get involved in women's health because there's more support. We've got large language models that can help us. We've got more better quality AI, so we can try and catch up and speed up. And now is a really good time, I believe, to be involved in FemTech. And this also makes me think about the medical consulting group. Where are you seeing the biggest demand for women's health expertise, would you say, at the moment?
Yeah, so we have been working with a few female femtech companies, women's health companies. I can't disclose any of them right now because we work under strict NDAs. But what I have seen, a lot of people are very interested on this year. I've seen it. It was a random week where I saw 5 same startups pitch to me the same idea, which is a continuous hormone monitoring. I think, Claudia, we were talking about this as well. Continuous
I'm so
hormone
excited about this. I'm so excited about this.
So there are companies that are coming up, companies that have came, companies that have went. You know, Level Zero Health is one of the front runners. Eli Health is also another one. Most of these people building in this space. And we're seeing more longevity, more data, the whole full data stack where, you know, people do more, get like the whole picture, the whole women's health picture. GLP is another big one. And then there's this question about bioidentical hormone replacement therapy as well. Lots of things are happening. The longevity space, as I repeat again, is another one that's being targeted here. You know, ovarian health, ovarian function as well. And we're doing more blood tests for this as well. From what we are seeing, you know, people are still looking for women health experts. People are still definitely looking for women's health experts. They are still looking for ONGs, ONG consultants. They are looking for IVF specialists. You know, these are the things that we've actually gotten quotes for. Real clinical expertise is still incredibly valuable. But also there's this trend. It's a bit of an interesting one. You know, I can share a bit more. I'm not going to name any names, but I think this is some real conversations I've been having. And I think it's going to be a very interesting thing to think about. So we know a lot of people are operating in the wellness space, okay? Specifically because they want to evade medical regulations. They don't want to be a class 2A medical device. They don't want to worry about CQC. They don't want to have to worry about so much other stuff. But two founders operating in the wellness space have reached out to me to talk a lot more about medical device, to talk more about CE and CA marking. And I was very curious, you know, with them because and they're friends, you know, so I just told them, like, why the sudden change of heart? Why, you know, your product is firmly set in the wellness space. You've made it very clear. You've made it very, very clear that it's the wellness space and that's where you want to be. But two founders reached out to me and to talk about, actually, in our product roadmap, I want to go down the medical device pathway. I want to get a class 1 medical device or maybe a class 2 medical device. I was like, why go through that effort? And ultimately, they say they want to signal credibility. They want to signal credibility. They want to stand out in this sea of similar people. You know, they want to be someone who can show that I am someone you can trust. Our services are reputable, you know. And I think that's where clinical expertise comes a lot into play. And also regulatory expertise. You know, that's two very different things. People are starting to say, okay, competition is hella saturated. Everyone is preaching from the same hymn book. Everyone's doing the same thing. What's the difference here? And the difference really is regulation because there's so little, so little regulated products out there. So interesting. It's just very interesting to see that people are starting to move towards that direction. Having said that, it is a very treacherous path and very expensive path to go down. So It's not something you can necessarily bootstrap that easily unless you have your own expertise doing it in the first place.
I think I've sent you, Claudia, like several voice notes about this wellness versus medical device kind of grey area at the moment, which, in my opinion, I think there's going to be a lot more clarity over the next couple of years. I think as regulation actually catches up with innovation, it'd be interesting to know your thoughts, Derrick, is that a lot of these wellness devices will actually be made to follow some kind of regulation, because I think it's quite easy at the moment for some wellness apps to have medical elements but slip through the net. Whereas I think that, what's the saying at the moment? Regulation is sexy. I think we're trying to make it a bit more glamorous, that journey, but it is an arduous journey and an expensive journey. So understandably, I think people think if they can avoid it, then they will. But I have the feeling that it's going to be a lot harder to escape any kind of regulation over the next couple of years.
And I think the interesting thing to note as well is that the funny thing is, regulations really start to become a problem when you become more successful. Nobody, honestly, the MHRA, the FDA do not have the manpower to police every single app out there. The truth of the matter is, but once you become successful, once you actually get proper traction and people are starting to look at you either with envy or with question or with jealousy, and people start making reports, then it's a sign that you're getting successful, but it's also a sign that you're probably going to get in hot water. Like the most obvious one was, I think, was it
Whoop.
Was it Whoop? Whoop. It was Whoop. Yeah.
Yeah.
It got slapped with a massive FDA cease and desist. And I think that's often what people see as well. You often hit a certain level of traction and you get a lot of eyeballs, and then regulations suddenly becomes a problem. And then you have to rapidly scale back, and then you're like, okay, actually I'm not allowed to say this. I need to get a Class 2A recognition before I can start talking about it in a marketing authorization sense. We see a lot this happens to the mental health chatbots out there, Wysa, Wobots, and the stuff out there, So you always see in their website, their first line that we are not a medical device, this does not replace medical advice, etc. But we are seeing people are moving in that space. But hopefully regulations can be less of a hurdle and less expensive, because it's far too expensive now.
And with regards to health tech careers in general, I know you said at the beginning of our discussion that there were more people who seem to be interested in the space. Have you got any advice for people at the beginning of that journey? So maybe they're thinking, it's January, I'm having an epiphany for 2026. I'm thinking about changing my career. Have you got some tips or some advice for those people?
Of course, yeah. I write quite frequently on this. I think I have like 5 or 6 LinkedIn posts on this topic already. I guess for 2026, the cliche is, you got to start. Yeah, right. And that's obvious. You got to start. And the question is, what do you start doing? I think if there's just one big lesson I can push forward, is you have to be visible. Visibility is a problem a lot of clinicians struggle with, especially if you're coming into industry. Visibility is not something you need in healthcare. You don't need visibility to get a job. Maybe you need some form of visibility to get a more higher executive position. But if you're coming into industry as a fresh clinician, let's say you are a ONG registrar, a GP, a freshly qualified consultant, or even a very experienced consultant, and you want to do more work in industry, and this we're talking about, and industry is a very broad catching term: health tech, biotech, pharma, medical devices, venture capital, investment, big tech. It covers everything, industry, If you want to do something like this, you have to be visible. People need to know who you are. And visibility can be built simply by A, going to networking events, B, writing on social media, posting, C, digging into your networks and actually just getting lots of introductions and actually meeting people face to face. Or D, appearing in the Pink Pineapple podcast and then reach 1,000 people, 1,000 of the right people. I think it's just being more visible and letting people know who you are and what you stand for. I think let's not overcomplicate it. Let's start from there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think I was saying to Emma as well before, and I've said on a few podcasts, that all the health tech jobs that I've ever had have come via LinkedIn. Just from being visible on LinkedIn and writing about what I love to write about and interacting with other people within this space, a lot of recruiters for health tech are there. And a lot of
Yeah.
health tech is there. So if you are very visible there and you're talking and being genuine, again, not performative. We don't
Yes.
endorse like super performative actions. But if you're there and you're genuine and you're open and you're talking about your experiences, or if you don't want to say something but want to engage and comment with others, then that does work really very well. And I also agree with you, the events too. I always give James Somaru a shout out, like all the
Yeah.
time. I think I need shares in Somex, I think, because I always give them a shout out because I love their events. They're just the right size to be able to meet people, see people face to face that you've met via LinkedIn. And I think a lot of opportunities come out of these kinds of events.
Yeah, indeed. Often I find that you use LinkedIn to sow the seeds and then you harvest in real life events, because you get to see people face to face and it's just wonderful. It's just wonderful to meet people in person.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to start wrapping up a bit, Derrick, we wanted to ask you a question that if you could make one change that would accelerate male allyship in FemTech tomorrow, what would it be?
And I guess just thinking from a more practical perspective, I think what Leo Tyson is doing is very, very good because he's curating lots of events. He's doing exactly what needs to be done, which is to get more eyeballs, more men and women into the same room. You need to curate events where it's not just a pure women panel. There's a bit of a mixed panel, 3-to-1 ratio. Not a 3 men to 1 female ratio. It should be a 3 female to 1 man ratio. I think there's still that appreciation that should happen. Curate more events, get more collaboration, do things either through LinkedIn Live, webinars, real life events, conferences, collaborate with both sides. I think that is probably more important. Again, it all comes down to visibility. People need to be shown, not told. Because when people see like, oh wow, this very prolific guy is working with this very prolific girl, and they are putting together a very well curated, sensible, considerate thing, then wonderful. That's gonna do so much better. You don't want a random person doing something very controversial and it leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. You want to do this properly and slowly. You don't have to rush these kind of things. But yes, I think there are spaces in place and there are people who are interested as well.
Fantastic. Well, we have really enjoyed chatting with you today, Derrick, and I think that there'll be lots of people in the new year enjoying this episode, and particularly those that are thinking about getting into health tech or those that are considering how they can become more of an ally in the women's health space. Where can our listeners learn more about Medical Consulting Group, and where can they find out more about you?
Well, you can just add me on LinkedIn at Dr. Derrick Khor, or you can just go to our website at medicalconsultinggroup.co.uk. We have all our information there, and all my carousels, infographics are all on the content page as well.
I can't believe we've not talked about Derrick's infographics. We've gone the whole way through this and not talked about how amazing Derrick's infographics are. So seriously, if you're interested in health tech or you want to know anything about regulation, finance, etc., check out those infographics because they are amazing and they're so well put together.
Thank you. I do my best. I do my best.
I was going to say the same thing, and I was going to say, go find him so you can find the famous butternut squash.
Yeah, I mean, 10 points to whoever finds it first on my LinkedIn page. It's deep lore. It's very deep lore.
Yeah, I think someone should get like a particular shout out if they put hashtag the Pink Pineapple podcast on that post if they manage to find it.
Find it, yeah. Whoever gets it gets 10 points. It's a deep piece of LinkedIn lore. I think it was back when I had not much followers as well.
Well, thank you, Derrick. Thank you for being such a great ally as well. And we look forward to seeing more from you on LinkedIn in 2026. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us.
And all the best for the podcast as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for being here. We love having you with us on this journey through women's health and innovation.
Follow us on Instagram at the Pink Pineapple Podcast for clips, conversations, and the latest in women's health and femtech.
We'll see you next week. Same pineapple, new topic. Everything we talk about on the Pink Pineapple podcast is here to inform and inspire, but it's not a substitute for professional medical advice. If you're worried about your health, please reach out to your GP or healthcare provider.